Welcome, Jessamy Koratoga, who has been working with Animal Aid for several years now, head of the science department. During April, Animal Aid dropped some new footage, which was the first of its kind for a good 10 years. To discuss that with us this evening is Jessamy, and I will leave it with her to make the proceedings. Thank you very much for joining us, Jessamy, and thank you to everybody else for also joining us. And I'll leave it in your capable hands, and we'll come back for Q&As at the end. If you've got any things that you want, any questions that you have, then please drop them in the chat or save them in your mind for the end of the day, and then for the end of the talk, and we will come back to it then. If you would like to start, we are ready when you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you. So, yeah, I think most of you know me. Most of you know who Animal Aid are. So, Animal Aid have been around since 1977, which is not quite as long as I've been around. And we are animal rights group. We campaign on lots of different issues. One of the ones we've been campaigning on since the very beginning is against all animal experiments. And I'm the head of science at Animal Aid. I've been there 10 years now. So, as Alan said, I think some of you will have seen the footage that we had. And I'm just going to talk to you about exactly what you can see. I haven't got the actual video. I think it's quite a strong watch for a lot of people. So I think if people have watched it in their own time and just, in your own space and kind of dealt with how it's made you feel, I'm going to go through some still photographs from the footage and just explain to you what we can see to kind of put it in context for everybody. Obviously, the photos are still horrific because of what we know is happening to the animals. So I'm sorry for how you're all going to feel going through this, but I think it's really important for us to understand what's happening and why, so that we can talk to other people about it. So, as I said, Animal Aid are opposed to all animal experiments on ethical and scientific grounds. So the footage, most of you know that the footage it was filmed inside two UK animal testing laboratories, or CROs, mostly during 2025. And it shows toxicity testing on animals, including dogs, monkeys, pigs, rabbits, and rats. The footage was gathered by laboratory staff, and it was shared with Animals International, who then reached out to Animal Aid and asked us if we would be their sort of UK partner and help expose what was happening to the animals. Really important to note that everything that you see in the footage is legal. There's nothing illegal, and it's all licensed under current UK regulations, which I think for some of us makes it even more shocking. So as I said, I'm going to go through the photographs and explain to everybody what you can see and what it's all about. So this is a rat. As you can see, they're tethered. They've sort of got I don't know if can you see my cursor? I don't know if, no. Yes, Deb's not nodding. Thank you. That's useful for pointing. So as you can see, this rat, I think, is tethered here by the neck, and they're in this sort of big metal container, which is actually a metabolism cage. So what this does, you can see also here on their tail, they've got sort of a long-term catheter. So it basically there's a needle going into their vein, and it's an intravenous infusion. So the test substance goes into the animal's vein over a long period of time. The rats are isolated for long periods of time. And these tests can last up to 2 years. And I think if I just forward to the next one, this you can see. So this is, I think, what's called a metabolism cage. So these have a specific function. As you can see, it's really barren, but the idea of them is that when an animal is in those, you can monitor the amount of food they take in, their activity. You can monitor how much oxygen they take in, how much carbon dioxide they breathe out, basically work out what their metabolism is, and also their wee and poo can be separated out, so you can check that, analyze it, possibly weigh it, do sort of, whatever analysis you want to do of those. So this is another instance with rats. I've grouped these by species, so I'll go through all the rat ones first and then on to the next species, just to kind of save darting around. So these are fully conscious rats. As you can see, I kind of think of these as being like a big syringe. They function the same. So there's a plastic sort of stopper there. So the rats are sort of fed in head first. There's a hole at the end, so their nose is exposed. The sort of plunger, if you want to call it that, is sort of pushed in so that they are forced up to the front of the tube. Their nose is exposed, and then they're sort of each of these is put into this inhalation tower. So going up through this tower will be different sort of gases or vaporized compounds that the rats are being forced to breathe in, basically, and they can be in these towers for several hours. And as I said, they can't turn around, they can't escape it. If you actually look at the footage, some of the rats appear to be grooming themselves quite frantically. I'm not a rodent behaviourist, but I think that's probably a sign of distress. The only thing they can do is kind of groom. It's a bit, it's like a displacement activity. They're distressed or stressed. So that's the only sort of the activity that they can actually do, because they're so squashed up in there. The next slide is something we're going to see quite a bit of in this presentation. It's oral gavage, or gavage, as some people call it. It's basically, as you can kind of imagine, it's force feeding the animal. So a flexible plastic tube is pushed down their throat into their stomach, so that the substance can be given, or can be sort of pumped or sort of syringed down the tube straight into their stomach. And this is a way to sort of force feed the animals. One thing to notice with this, obviously, it's quite an invasive procedure, and it can cause animals to gag. They're obviously going to be frightened. It can also cause injury to their throats, and sometimes, and not necessarily with this, but one of the possible side effects of gavage is that animals can, if it's not done correctly, and obviously even correctly it's horrifically brutal, but the compound can be pushed into the animal's lungs, which can obviously affect them further to the actual gavage itself. There was a paper in 2012 which looked at the stress caused to rats during gavage. And this is only the procedure. This is nothing to do with the actual compound that's being tested. So the paper said that research has shown that dosing of rats and mice via oral gavage can induce significant stress. The authors went on to explain how it can increase their blood pressure, their heart rate, and stress hormones, and how it's of significant concern since it's a standard route of oral delivery used in most preclinical and toxicological studies, and it could by itself confound the results due to dosing-induced stress. And obviously it's horrifically stressful for the animal to be sort of held and to have that done to them. So the next set of animals is the pigs. So again, this is a pig being gavaged. So during all gavage, struggling, squealing pigs are restrained while a dosing tube is forced down their throats through their esophagus to deliver the test substance directly into their stomach. And as you can imagine, it's deeply distressing and invasive. And if you look really carefully, it looks to me like there's a plastic sort of bar or something that's being put into between the pig's teeth, potentially, I guess, to stop them biting the tube or biting, the person's hand. And this is obviously, we all know this is horrifically stressful for the animals. But I actually found a quote from a supplier of mini pigs. So this is one of the companies that will breeds the mini pigs and will send them to laboratories for use. And they say oral gavage is a stressful procedure for pigs, as the pig must be caught, fixated in order for the oral gavage tube to be placed, and restrained throughout the procedure. The oral gavage procedure may lead to physiological stress, The animals often become more aversive towards humans, which obviously shows that they're learning. It was horrible last time, it's going to be horrible this time. Then they go on. It can also be a stressful procedure for the animal technicians, as they must use force to restrain the animals, which in the long run lowers their motivation to do the work, with the risk of compassion fatigue. As I said, this is a supplier of the mini pigs, or supplier of mini pigs. And they say that a typical oral gavage procedure requires at least 3 persons for fixating, placing the tube, and dosing the animal. The procedure takes a few to 5 minutes. So that's what the supplier expects to be sort of standard practice for pigs being gavaged. So this next photo is, as you can see, this is dermal toxicity testing. And this is, I mean, I don't know how many of you actually looked at the video, but the sound when they pull the cover off of the pig's back is just absolutely horrific. So in this test, rectangles of skin and flesh are surgically cut out of the backs of pigs, and then a test substance is applied. As you can see there, it's being syringed on by the worker. Just looking at that, I think the wounds must be absolutely excruciating. And as you would expect, the pigs struggle and cry as the test substances are applied. So the next image is of a pig upside down on their back, as you can see, being held by 1, 2, 3 people while someone else takes blood. So again, this is from a website of a supplier of mini pigs. So they say blood sampling in laboratory mini pigs is a stressful procedure, especially in studies that demand multiple samples a day, and restraint is often considered necessary to ensure the safety of the mini pig and personnel during sampling. One of the standard blood sampling methods requires a mini pig to be restrained in dorsal recumbency, which basically means on their back, which is what you can see in the image there, on a V bench, a position that is seldom tolerated by the animals. So again, being upside down is very, very stressful for them, because they have no control over anything. On to rabbits. So this shows what happens to pregnant rabbits. They're completely immobilized in plastic containers, as you can see. And the test substance is being injected over a period of time into the ear of the rabbit, into a vein in her ear. This is to see the effect of the substance on the survival of her offspring, and also how they develop. The next image is again of a rabbit. This again is oral gavage. So forcibly restrained, the tube again is forced into the rabbit's mouth through the esophagus, and the test substance is administered directly into her stomach or their stomachs. Pregnant rabbits are often used in these tests. So the next slide is of dogs, beagle dogs. So as you can see, the dogs are tethered, so they can't move. The masks are strapped onto their faces, and they're inhaling chemical vapors. This can be daily in studies that last for many months. In toxicity testing labs, beagles are subjected to various procedures and ongoing monitoring. So I think these sort of, as you can see, these crocodile clips are obviously attached to the animal's skin. So I suspect that's probably something to do with sort of, you know, heart rate or pulse or something like that. But again, the poor beagle's in a sling, so he or she hasn't got their feet on the ground. Again, they've got no control, they can't run away. So that's going to be very stressful for them. This poor beagle is going through a practice that's called continuous infusion toxicity. The dogs have a catheter which is surgically implanted into a vein. And then this jacket actually has a pump on it, which has got some of the substance in it and a mechanical pump. And this will then pump a certain amount of the substance sort of continuously in the animals, into the animal's vein. And as you can see, they've got one of these big collars so that they can't interfere with the catheter or the pump or any of the equipment that they're being forced to carry around with them. And so that will go into the substance will go into their bloodstream for a period of time. The next footage is again oral gavage. So it's the same principle as all the other animals, basically flexible tube down into their stomach, and then this will be the substance that will be squirted down the tube into their stomach. And again, this can be repeated over and over and over again. And we know if any of you live with dogs, when you go to the front door and you get their lead, they're excited because they know what's happening. And I think the same is going to be happening with these animals. They know what's coming because it's happened to them before. And now this is onto primates. In toxicity tests, primates, because obviously of their hands and feet, they're quite dexterous. So they're restrained in what are called primate chairs. And this primate is actually being sort of habituated or trained to be in the chair. And I just think, for me, this photo is it says a million words. I think this poor little boy or girl has got grapes or something in their mouth, so obviously they're feeding them to try and get them used to being in the chair, to not struggle and panic. And but obviously it's still very distressing for any animal not to be able to move. So this is sort of what you'd call training equipment, I think. And then this is the actual test equipment. So as you can see, these monkeys, they can move their hands, but because there's a sort of a platform or like a shelf along here, they can't actually reach up and over to remove the mask. So they're sitting there and they're forced to inhale whatever substance is being pumped into the masks. In the footage, you can see one of the animals is getting quite distressed, and he's spinning around and sort of trying helplessly to get out of the situation that he's in. This is a primate having blood taken. You can see from their face they're quite distressed by what's happening. Again, being held down by people is very stressful for any animal. And this again is gavage. So you can see here someone's holding the monkey's arms, someone else is force feeding them. I can't actually see it in this photo, but I know from looking at previous photos of laboratory primates being subjected to gavage, there's often somebody holding their legs as well, because obviously their legs, they've got their feet function almost as hands. So if you don't hold their legs, they will grab hold of you with their feet. So I suspect there probably is someone lower down, but obviously we can't see them in this photo. So that's the end of the photo. So I'm sorry for how this is all making you all feel. One of the things that's really important, as I said, none of this is illegal. There's no sort of additional violence. No one's doing anything illegal to the animals. But it's all licensed by the Home Office. And one of the things that's really important, I think probably most of you will know, that when someone wants to do animal experiments, those are licensed by the Home Office. Home Office inspectors will look at applications and will do what's called a harm benefit analysis. So the harm benefit analysis is part of the assessment of a license. So a Home Office inspector will look at a license application and they need to do a harm benefit analysis. So all of the inspectors are medical doctors or veterinary surgeons. And the harm benefit analysis has been described as the cornerstone of animal research regulation. It's considered to be a key ethical safeguard for animals. And the harm benefit analysis involves weighing the anticipated benefits of animal research against its predicted harms to the animals. But as this paper says, there are doubts about how objective and accountable this process is. So I think it's worth bearing in mind the harm benefit analysis should balance harm the actual harms to the animals and the projected benefits. So a few years ago, I think it was 2024, the Animals and Science Committee looked at service licenses which used non-human primates. So service licenses used to be called multiple generic licenses, or sometimes generic licenses. So they reviewed 11 licenses using primates for safety or metabolism testing, or the supply of primate blood and tissue. All the licenses they looked at used macaques of different species. Some people using the animals had specified it was a cynomolgus macaque. Others hadn't. They just sort of said old world monkey. And a questionnaire was sent to license holders, and there was a call for evidence from the stakeholders. So one really important thing to remember about service licenses, or multiple generic licenses, or generic licenses, or whatever they're called, is that when the harm benefit analysis is being done, the person doing the assessment does not know what the substance is that's going to be tested on the animals. So they have no idea. So our contention is, if you don't know what you're testing on the animals, how do you know what effect it's going to have on them? How do you know how much it's going to hurt them? Potentially also, some people would say, well, what about the benefits? I mean, we all know there aren't any benefits to animal experiments. So, but not knowing the actual compound is a really sort of big missing piece of how people should be able to assess any license. So the ASC, the Animals and Science Committee, looked at these primate licenses, and they actually said the nature of these licenses means that permission is granted ahead of knowing which substance will be tested. And the benefit is understood to be the provision of safety data for presenting to a medicines regulator, or the provision of blood and tissue for other research purposes, rather than, for example, the benefit or utility of the specific substance being tested. So they're saying what I've said. They're looking at the actual testing as being the benefit rather than what the substance actually is. And they say this is a matter of concern, as we believe there is a societal expectation that the potential benefit of a substance being tested should be taken into account in the harm benefit assessment, or the harm benefit analysis. Their report goes on to say, we consider that the absence of routine, effective scrutiny of the wider potential value and utility of each substance being tested remains an important gap within the regulatory oversight of these licenses in the UK. While the actual number of these types of licenses is small compared with the overall number authorised, the numbers of NHPs, which is non-human primates, involved in these types of licenses is relatively very high. Indeed, the vast majority of NHPs, or primate use, in the UK takes place under such licenses. So Animal Aid have sent a briefing on the footage to all MPs. We've written to the Home Office. Some MPs have very kindly tabled written parliamentary questions about the footage and what's going to happen next. And we are continuing to work with MPs to try and get things changed and get real change for it's too late for these poor animals, but for animals that are being bred to be used in toxicity testing in the future. So that is the end of my slides. I will stop sharing and go back to Imogen and Alan. And thank you. And sorry.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions in the from the participants in the chat? It's quite a heavy subject, I know, and quite devastating photography. Even they are just stills from the footage. Hey, Louise.
Hiya, how you doing?
Fine and dandy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm all right. Yeah, just really shocked at seeing the pictures. Yeah, because the reason why I'm kind of watching it is because we go over to Ledbury, where Sequani is, which Imogen and Alan will know about, and it's been there for over 40 years. And I wanted to see, because I mentioned they've got pigs there. I think is it the Copenhagen, or is there a Copenhagen pig? Somebody mentioned it to me.
You're muted, Jessamy.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. I think there's a
Yeah.
Gothenburg pig,
Is it? It could be that.
possibly another sort of German place name.
I've never seen. I'm actually quite shocked at the physical side of the pig testing. How deep the wounds are. I know that's like a crazy thing to say, because any depth is like really like awful, but just the actual shocking kind of depth of it, I had no idea that was. So even after testing, would those pigs then, would they be patched up, or are they open to infection, or what's the timeline on them? Do you know, or do they get put to sleep after the testing is done, or do they go on to be retested and retested again? I
don't know. My hunch would be that they wouldn't, because I think often with animals, and this is when an animal's been used for something like that, you typically, someone working in a laboratory would typically want to look at their organs to see, has it reached the liver, has it affected the kidneys or whatever. So I suspect they would be killed at the end of the experiment, and then different organs looked at. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, those wounds are just,
I'm shocked actually.
And I think a lot of people don't know that there are pigs in laboratories, or they don't understand what happens to them. And I think the real strength of this footage is that it's not illegal, so you can show that to people and say, I've shown it to people, and they've said, well, they're going to shut them down. And I said, no, because there's absolutely nothing illegal happening here at all. And I think that shocks a lot of people, because they just think, well, that can't be legal, because that's grotesque and horrible. So someone must be doing something that they're not supposed to do. They're not.
It's remarkable, really, to kind of, and the rat side of it, like I didn't know that either. I didn't know that the longevity of some of those experiments and the type of experiment, how kind of intricate that is, but how long it goes on for, like you said 2 years, which is like mind-blowing to be honest.
I think the idea of that is that obviously, well, a lot of rats don't live to be,
I was going to say,
great ages. So I think the thinking is that a 2-year-old rat is the equivalent to an elderly person. So you've got that sort of whole lifespan, sort of, well, in inverted commas, it's all in inverted commas, isn't it? But that's, I think, the thinking of doing sort of 2-year tests on
can I
rats.
ask you what you think of, when they're doing experiments on animals and they do clinical trials on those animals, and then they do like clinical trials in humans, how do they take that information from that kind of subject to the human kind of side of it? How do they bridge that gap, or do they just talk a lot of bollocks? Do you know what I mean? Sorry. Just do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I mean, we always say that animals are not the same as people. So whatever information you get from an animal, you are going to have to extrapolate it or take a leap of faith. I always say to people, we use beagles in toxicity testing, but yet we know that chocolate is poisonous to dogs. So where along the line do you say, well, this is poisonous, but it might not be poisonous, and this, do you know what I mean? It's like, well, something, if it looks poisonous, is it poisonous? Well, or does it just look like it's poisonous, but it actually wouldn't be poisonous in humans? Which is the whole thing of animal testing, is that you have a result, which is a result for that animal and that compound. And even things like different rats, there are, I don't know how many different strains of rat. If you get 2 different strains of rat, they will not behave the same with a compound. So if you've got 2 rats that are different, how is you and a rat, or me and a dog, or anyone and a pig, how is that? So I don't know.
Right.
to be
Thank
honest,
you.
or it would probably take me 3 hours to explain it to you, and then we'd both still be going, "But that doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, that's all right. But thank you.
That's okay.
So Deborah has put in the chat, is it known whether the whistleblowers worked in the labs with the intention of taking undercover footage, or was it a spontaneous decision?
I don't know, to be totally honest with you. I don't know if any of you looked on the website, on the Toxicity Inc. website. There's something on there that I think the workers were just wanted people to know what was happening and what they were expected to do. Because, you know, there's a human toll to this. I mean, obviously, there's what the animals are going through is horrific. But, you know, even the suppliers of the mini pigs that I quoted earlier are talking about, you know, people are less motivated to do it because it's, you know, it's not pleasant if an animal is, you know, reacting to what you're doing. So I don't know what their intention was. But I'm really thankful that we have this footage because it's so clear. And it's no one can, I don't think anyone can look at it and say that's all right. I defy anyone to look at it and say that's okay. And again, because there's nothing illegal, it's not, people can't point and say, yeah, but if it was done properly, if it was done how they show you in the textbooks, the animals wouldn't be struggling, the animals wouldn't be crying. It's just because that person's being rough or that's happening. But it's all happening, you know,
So
as
these,
it should.
yeah,
And
so,
you can still see how the animals are reacting and behaving and what it does, you know, and what it does to them. They're in laboratories, they're being restrained.
so just to categorically get this correct, those people that took that footage were people that were already working there. There weren't people that were sent in.
I don't think they were sent in. I think they were working there.
Right.
I think.
They obviously had enough then. Yes, Louise.
So that means then that they'd psychologically had enough then of what they were actually seeing. So how many workers then are suffering with that as well, that they go in there? And does that have a knock-on effect with students coming through, do you think, that would be going into certain fields of the kind of medical field, or going into kind of big corporate pharma and kind of doing certain jobs? That must be a retaining problem.
Yeah,
surely.
I mean, I spoke to a student a few years ago. Well, she'd started off as a veterinary student. I won't say where or who she was, but she'd started as a veterinary student. And, you know, she said, I loved animals. I wanted to work with animals. And, you know, and she said in the first term, she said, she was so surprised and shocked and disappointed at the attitude of the staff and the other students to the animals. She just thought, I can't do this for 5 years. So she left.
Wow.
And she cited a sort of a particularly horrible incident that happened with a dead animal, but it was still shocked her that people's attitude. And she just thought, you know, I want to do this, but I can't put myself through 5 years of this. She was vegan when she went to college or to university. So I do think perhaps sometimes people want to go into a profession thinking I'm going to, you know, I want to care for animals, I like animals, you know, and then get there and realise the reality is something quite different.
Yeah.
We have a good talk with Madeline Krasner. It's a bit of an aside, but you were talking about the people who work there and the suffering that they undergo, Louise. Madeline runs an organisation called Justify, and that's for people who are suffering with PTSD from having worked in that environment. She herself once worked in a primate laboratory, but she was there as a caregiver for the primates, so she wasn't actually in the labs themselves. And for a very long time, she wanted to leave, but felt she couldn't leave because if she left, then those primates would be left to somebody else, and somebody else wouldn't care as much as she did. And she finally did leave, and she finally set up Justify. And many, many, many years later, someone she'd actually worked with at the time came and joined her and said she'd been having exactly the same issues herself, but couldn't discuss them because there's such an atmosphere of I can't think what the word is, but that people are unable to say anything. Go on, Louise.
Well, strangely, you should say that, Alan, actually, and Imi, because I was over at Sequani and it was really strange. And I'd just gone over there randomly, taken a board, gone over, and the guy that had worked there on security for like the last 35 years, he came over to me and I was stood there and he said, Louise, I said, yeah. And he said, I just want to say this is my last day and I've never said this before. And don't be angry. Don't go at me. Just listen to what I've got to say. And I said, I'm not going to go at you. Just say what you've got to say. And he said, everything you've done over the years, everything that we've seen and everything I've seen on those boards is absolutely true. Everything that you're saying is true. And I'm sorry that I've not been able to open my mouth, but I want you to, and I could have actually cried, but just because of the way he just came over and he sort of entrusted myself, everybody else was around, but he just went, Louise, you've been here for years, but I want you to know something. This is what I want you to know. And he left, but he said, I've seen things that are just dreadful, just awful, but I can say that now because I'm leaving. And I said, but why didn't you say it when you were working? Why didn't you open your mouth and say it? Because we're here and we're here for a reason. And he backed us up on it.
Yeah.
It's a rare thing to happen. You're on mute, I think.
I know, I just muted myself. Instead of unmuting myself, I just muted myself. I was just going to say the problem with the people that are working there and everything else is they've got bills to pay. They've got, you're working there as a security, it's a shit paid job, but it's a steady income, etc., etc. So you keep your head down, turn a blind eye, do whatever it is that you can to get through the day to pay the fucking bills at the end of the day, which is but it's beautiful that they actually it's beautiful that they actually opened up and expressed themselves on their final day.
Yeah.
And to you, of course.
Yeah, it was really strange, really weird. Very odd.
So Deborah says, given how horrific this legal testing is, will the Daily Mail be doing a follow-up, as we don't want us to get buried?
Oh, I don't know. I'd like it if they did. Yeah, I think it would be, I don't know, to be totally honest. I mean, we're doing everything we can to keep it sort of live in people's minds, because what we don't want is people to kind of, forget and move on. And
well, that's a very good follow-up to that question. What can we do to make this an issue, to keep this in the public's eye?
I think, we Animal Aid have written to all MPs asking them to stop granting all new service licenses. I mean, I know it's service licenses, it's not all animal experiments. I mean, obviously that's what we want, but specifically focus on this footage and what's happening. So to not grant any new service licenses, to review all the existing licenses, and then just to make the government roadmap, which we all know about, make it as robust and as fast as possible, because I think, it's been more than a year since is it a year since it came out? No, about 6 months, but even so, things need to happen faster. So I think, write to your MP and ask them if they've seen it. We've had a lot of MPs. Last time I looked, that 14,000 people, more than 14,000 people in the UK had written to MPs about the footage. So we know that they're seeing it. MPs are thinking, what is this? We've sent them the briefing. They've got all the information there. And I think it will, because there's nothing illegal. This is the sort of thing that will be happening across the country in all the different CROs and laboratories. It's not one bad apple or two bad apples. It's toxicity testing.
So I got the response from my MP today. He forwarded it.
Right.
and asked Lord Valence, Minister
Yeah.
of State for Science, Innovation, Research and Nuclear, to respond. And it's, I don't know, pretty standard. This is what we're doing. Yeah, this is why it's great. Roadmap, basically. And we understand the public don't like this footage. And yeah, we're doing great stuff, basically. So nothing new. They said something about you may also be aware that this issue was debated in Parliament on 27th of April, following petition, blah, 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 which called for an end to testing on dogs and other animals for the development of products for human use. More details are available here. I haven't yet clicked on, because it's only just arrived. But yeah, nothing very exciting in there. I don't know if you've got a recommendation for a follow-up to that.
No, I think just asking people, contact your MP. I'd also, I don't know how many of you looked at the website. You can actually go on there and there's a witness mode, so you can read all the sort of information, but all the images are blurred out. So I'd encourage people to look on there and to ask other people to have a look on there. I mean, you don't have to expose yourself to the horrors that I've sort of exposed you all to tonight. But just for people to know what's happening. And I think write to your MPs and say, this is licensed. How can this be something that is licensed and accepted within our country as, being good scientific practice, when it is as horrific as we see. This is the horror on top of the species differences and the distress to animals living in laboratory and all the other issues we know about that make animal tests so unreliable. Sorry.
Yeah, you said ask them to stop licensing new.
Yeah, so we've
service.
said no new service licenses to be granted, and a review of all the existing ones.
Yeah.
Louise?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when they kind of, the government say, like life sciences, they want more life sciences in the UK. You hear it being kind of bandied about. That is the use of animals, isn't it? So is that more new animals that they would be or not?
I don't take life sciences to mean animals.
Or does oh, right, that's okay. So it can be anything.
Yeah, because I think, if you're studying life, you can study life without torturing an animal. If you want to look at, I don't know, how a virus infects a human, that's life, and you can do that with a organ on a chip or human tissue cultures and that sort of thing. So no, I don't think all life sciences mean specifically that there is live animals involved.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that.
That's not how I understand it anyway. Who knows?
No, I just hear different people saying, life sciences, that kind of equates to animal sort of science, and I thought, does it mean that there's more to it than that?
I think there's more to it than that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Simran, did you have your hand up? You're muted.
Hello.
No.
Am I audible?
You are now, yes.
Hi everyone. So I think you all know each other. I received this invitation through the organization that I am working at. I've just started working there, specifically with animals and experimentation, and it's been great listening to you guys talk about something that I'm just starting to learn about. And I had a small question. I missed some of the session. Actually, it's a bit late here. I think I miscalculated the timing, so apologies about that. And I had no idea that pigs are also used in research, so that was new for me. I'll read up about this. My question was pertaining to the 3 R's in experimentation. As per your experience, how applicable has that really been, practically speaking? Because I'm from India, and here, because testing on animals for cosmetics is totally banned, but everything else is allowed, right? And I'm just still trying to understand the landscape here, how sourcing for animals happens, and I just wanted to get your 2 cents on, how the 3 R's plays out in real life, because on paper it sounds good. I don't want to say good, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Do you want to answer, Alan, or shall I put my 2 pence in first?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, you go for yours first, Jessamy, and then I'll see if there's anything left.
I think obviously the 3 R's are replacement, reduction, and refinement, and animal aid are and always will be 1 R. So we believe in the replacement of animals. I think when you're reducing and refining, I think that can be, it's not good enough, it's not good enough, it's not quick enough. We know, you know, the three R's were first drawn up by Russell and Birch, and I think, was it 1957, or I've got their book actually on behind me, but it, you know, it was a long time ago when science wasn't at the state it's at now. So I think sort of saying, oh well, can we use 4 rabbits instead of 6, which is reduction, that's still 4 rabbits too many. We've still got much better ways of doing science without harming animals. So I think we should all be just thinking 1 R, replace, replace, replace. And that's my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree entirely, as I suspected I would be. But I think if you look back right up to now, the 3 R's hasn't been replaced. It's been very much the other 2, and replace has been the final thing if the other 2 don't work. Whereas what we're looking for is replace, replace, replace. And if the other 2 don't work, stop doing them. It's not about it. Yeah, we from our point of view, from the FEAT organisation's point of view, and from Animal Aid's point of view as well, it's about stopping it, and stopping it as soon as is humanly possible. Yeah. And rather than faffing about with coming up with roadmaps or coming up with different ways of vagaries, is what I see them as. They seem to be just vagaries, and I've watched them for 40 years, promising the world and delivering nothing. So basically, I think the 3 R's is bogus for me personally, and all the emphasis must be on replace. It should be on stop. It should be on stop, and if just stop doing it all and then look for alternatives. But to me personally, it's beyond replace. It's just
absolutely. And I think this is what I found really disturbing as well when I found out about this concept, especially when I looked at when it was, this is I think 1959, whenever sometime in the 50s, and it was just really sad to see that we're still talking about it at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's almost as if you guys are talking about your MPs and how difficult it is to get anything out of them, just letting them know that, hey, do you know this is going on? What, this is absurd. This is legal, but is this really okay? I feel like the 3 R's kind of, the fact that they still exist and are talked about, helps them kind of stay within that, inaction. That, yeah, okay, we're not going to do anything about it. We have, this framework to work with. We have these 3 R's. We're doing something at least. I feel like there's so many legal loopholes. It's really unfortunate. We seem to have good animal laws in India, but when it comes to experimentation, I feel like people are just happy knowing that, okay, cosmetics, it's fine. Anything that's made in India, it's not tested on animals, but that's not good enough. And yeah, I just,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think the other thing, and it doesn't take away from, it needs to all just stop anyway. Can't think what the word is, but the people who monitor all the experiments and whether the replace and refine is working, they are, they've all got vested interests. They are all they've all been trained within the industry, and so they think that it's all fine and dandy. So it's not like it's independently monitored or anything like that. Deborah's got to come in, I think, in relation to this.
I think that was...
Go on, sorry, Jessamy, go on.
Sorry, just to add to Imi's point, I think, in the Rule report, which was looking at, academic work, and it said in the Rule report that, inspectors and AWERBs, which is the Animal Welfare and Ethical Review Body, so the internal body at an establishment that looks at what's going on, the Home Office inspectors and the AWERB don't have the knowledge of replacements or non-animal methods. So if you've got people scrutinising projects, and I use that term loosely, who don't know what the alternative is, because there are so many alternatives out there and it's an evolving field, to be a sort of across all of that and to be able to look at something and say, right, get rid of that and do this instead. And people just can't do it, aren't doing it.
Don't have the knowledge, don't have the will, is how it strikes me.
Yeah.
Deborah has also said the government's recent industrial plan shows they are very committed to AI in life sciences. The problem is pro-vivisectionist Lord Valence is in charge of the strategy and is persuading the government that animals are still essential, which sounds about par for the course. As we often say, quite repeatedly, it's just we're still claiming that animal research is the gold standard, with an average of a 96% failure rate. And as we always maintain, if that is the gold standard, I dread to think what anything lower is. Something I've been saying a lot throughout April is, as an average, you've got an average 96% failure rate in non-human animals to transfer, and in the alternatives, or the non-animal methods have got a 90% success rate in climate. So it's not just a 96% failure rate compared to a 90% success rate. It's ridiculous. It's completely and utterly the opposite of science. It's guesswork, if anything. If you do come across something that's working.
Well, it's basically, it's they can find an animal species in which it will work, and therefore they can
put their product out.
Yeah.
It's picking up on what Jessamy was saying earlier as well, is the fact that the difference in the variety of rat, the difference between those two varieties of rats. I've seen cases, it was a long time ago, but I remember there was something that was brought to market that had failed in 2 or 3 varieties of rat, but they had found one variety of rat where it was successful, and that was all they needed. So, you go through various different animals and are unsuccessful in what you're looking for until you find a species that was tolerable, and then you can write up your paper based on those and ignore the others that failed. I don't know if that's still the case, but I do remember seeing that very plainly written. Has anybody got anything else that they would like to ask?
If anyone does have any questions that they suddenly think of at 2 o'clock in the morning, then I think my email is up on there. So do just ping me an email and I will do my best to answer.
Jack says Edinburgh University have lots on their website about reduction and enriching cages, but nothing about stopping. Yeah, which says it all, really.
Again, it's a bit like Simran said, it's there to sort of justify what they're doing, isn't it? Make it all okay, good excuse not to do anything.
And I think, we all know this, but the very fact that an animal is in a cage in a laboratory, that animal is suffering. I think it was one of these talks when someone said to me, well, what do you say to people who say it's only a mild procedure? It's like, but that's the mild procedure on top of the suffering of not being able to decide what you eat, where you go, who you talk to, who you don't talk to, how much space you've got, how hot you're going to be when the lights go. There's so many things about a laboratory environment that are completely alien for any animal, that they're suffering just by the very fact they're in a laboratory before anyone's done anything to them.
And that in itself is going to skew all of the results that you get anyway. Louise, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I agree with, I think that the whole thing is so. It's down to what's happening to those animals, isn't it? That's the thing, and that's what I can't get that's what shocks me all the time. That's what's in my belly all the time, is the absolute the terribleness of it. And you can't get that across to the public. And you can't get that across to MPs. You can't get that across to anybody because they're not plugged in the same way as you are. You know, yeah, you're so sensitive to what those creatures are going through that people go, well, you know, that if they're put down and they're euthanized, what's kind of the problem? And you think, oh Jesus, you know, there's so much more to this, and this is so awful. And that's what does my brain in. I can't get my head round how the people in those places can't see it, can't look at it and go, geez, this is really wrong. You know, gavaging a pig, and even the eye of the pig in that photo struck me. How vulnerable she or he looked to that process, just that. And yet those people that are stood round her or him are not even tapped into that. Her eye, just her eye. If I was stood there, I'd be like, no, what are you doing? And that's what really, really shocks me and will always stay with me, really.
I think
sorry.
No,
just to say, obviously, this footage was gathered by laboratory workers. So and as we've all, we said earlier, some people do think, oh my good grief, what's happening, and do something about it. But I know, I've spoken to students, people doing PhDs, people working at universities who don't like what's happening, and for whatever reason, whether it's because they're halfway through a PhD and they don't know whether to carry on, whether they're working in a department where everybody else is pro animal and they're against animal experiments or whatever. I think sometimes it's really hard for people to listen to that inner voice saying, hold on.
It's very difficult when you're it's very difficult to acknowledge what you're doing is wrong if your livelihood depends upon it. And I know it might sound callous, but it's just, and you don't go straight into gavaging a pig or straight into ripping holes out the back of a pig. You go there by degree, so by the time you get to that point, you're slightly numbed already, and but I do think, the saving grace, if there is one, is that some of those people have had enough. Some of those people just can't cope with it, and some of those people get out there, and some of those people get out and they bring footage with them, evidence with them, in the hope that one day it'll all stop. There's a really good little film. What's that little 10-minute film that we put on the Discord the other day? I think it's Test Subjects. And that's 3 different people that were once working in laboratories.
Oh, I might take a look at that.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. It's only like a little 10-minute thing.
Okay.
But it's just 3 people that were working in there. They worked there because of different things, passing their PhD. And one of them even kept a log of the animals that they were responsible for torturing and killing. And they've all dedicated their time now to fighting that fight. And one of them, she's got a tally card, and she's constantly trying to assuage her guilt for the damage that she caused by trying to create more good. Yeah, it's a really, really powerful little film, and it's very, very short, but it's a great insight into how other people see the situation.
I think, I'd just like to say that coming from India, this is something actually that's talked about a lot, the livelihood aspect of these jobs that people, nobody wants to go into a slaughterhouse, and ordinarily nobody wants to go to a slaughterhouse and slaughter animals. But I think we have to acknowledge especially as people, as I think all of us are vegans here, as vegans, as empaths, I think it becomes more important for us to acknowledge the intersectionality that does unfortunately exist when it comes to these jobs. It's not like most of these people want to be doing this, and most of these people, like Alan said very rightly, they're numb. It's it's very difficult to talk about, especially when you're trying to. I mean, you can't just go there and tell somebody that, hey, this thing that your entire life depends on, this is animal cruelty. You need to stop this because there are like 1,000 other factors to consider. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I see that a lot here. Whenever I go on ground, it's really tough, trying to have that conversation with people. Still learning how to do that, but yeah.
So are we all.
Some of us never shut up.
Also from Deborah, the hardest thing about being an activist is learning that people don't react like you and can shut out all the horror. It's a terrible realization. Yeah, I think that's a fundamental realization. Back to just talking about the researchers as well, I think the vast majority of people enter into these professions thinking that they're doing good, thinking that they're making progress, that they're making a better world for people. And that you kind of, I imagine they find themselves balancing that in the cost benefit analysis, was the harm benefit analysis, thinking that, well, yes, I am doing this harm now, but it'll be for the greater good. And we all like a bit of utilitarianism, but it's not always appropriate. Yeah, go on, Louise.
I'm just going to say, with testing, is there ever going to be a time like when Sequani and people like that have been going for 40 years, torturing God knows how many animals? Do they ever get to a stage in that whole process where they've actually tested on everything that for every company? Do you know what I mean? Like.
Well, unfortunately, not in a capitalist society, because in a capitalist society, we're always going to create new compounds.
Because So because to say that they, because they'll have tested so much similar stuff all the time, places like Sequani, you think, well, don't they ever reach the end of that and think, well, we've done that. It's just that's what we've come to. But maybe I'm being.
There'll be a never-ending flow of different things to be testing out.
Yeah, different things and different combinations of things. Every time you look at anything that's got new improved written on it, anything that's got new improved written on it means that somewhere down the line they've got a whole new combination of compounds and things and put those together to see if they work any better than what they did last time.
Even though they can be quite similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, I'm sure people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you're vying for funding for research, it's better to go with something that's very similar to something that's already been done than something that nobody's ever touched before. Right. Because if you do that, you can relate it to something that's been done and say, well, look, these were the processes behind this, and these were the results behind this. So if we can take this and tweak it somehow, then the funders know that that's already viable. Whereas if you suddenly come up with some idea that nobody's ever touched before, then the funders are going to look at that and go, how do we know that's going to have any benefit?
Yeah, right.
I believe that's the case. Nobody's correcting me, so either nobody knows or I might even be right. That's my understanding anyway.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that anybody else would like to add?
I don't have a question. I just have a small observation. So I think earlier we were talking about, I think Louise was saying something about how people don't how people can't understand, seem to understand that something that's right in front of them and it's not okay. And we're able to, since we are sensitive, we're able to see that. Recently, just this last weekend, my team and I, we did outreach for animals in experimentation. And what we found, in fact, was that we spoke to a range of people, old people, kids, it was at this local park. And everybody seemed to agree that, okay, yeah, this is messed up. And I had taken out this printout of this pledge and I handed it to people just to see ki, all right, yes, these people really do agree that this is not okay. It educated them about looking at cruelty-free logos, and the next time they make a purchase, they should, check for that. Everybody seems to agree. It's just, I don't understand, like, if a company has been existing for, there's this company called Vico in India that's been existing for basically ever since India's independence. And they have been selling these products cruelty-free, vegan by default for decades. If that company can exist and function and it's accessible, it's affordable to people, then I don't understand how, it makes sense to be doing this at all. Majority of India has been consuming these products. People are fine. So, I think people were able to get that, make that connection instantly. And it was really nice to see that for a change, because if you do any other kind of outreach, it's more difficult to kind of rope people in. When it comes to experimentation, I found that, I don't know, people in India were like, oh, okay, yeah, this is wrong. When it comes to other stuff, not so much. Not when it comes to dairy, unfortunately. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, we've always considered that the anti-vivisection movement is like a cornerstone of the animal rights movement. Not only has it been around since the modern animal rights movement, but it's the one thing, regardless of where you stand in life and whatever your principles are, outside of that, the overwhelming majority of people feel that animal testing is wrong, abhorrent, and should end. And it's a great way for getting people involved in the animal rights movement, because you can use moral transfer then. So once people are involved in the anti-vivisection movement, you can then try and get them to understand how those morals apply to other animals outside of this industry. Yes, Louise.
I was going to say as well, it's, why do you think it's a cornerstone? Why is animal testing so much at the heart of what we do as a movement? I wanted to put that to all of you. Is why do you think that is? What is it that gets us so riled up about it? When there's so many other things as well that are heartbreaking and awful, we tend to have this real thing about it. What do you think that is to all of you? What do you think as activists and campaigners?
For me, I would say that it's brutal, barbaric, torturous, and unnecessary. And I know all of those words are outside of the actual animal rights thing, but they're the things that drive straight to the heart. As you can come to it with that necessary evil, as most people perceive it as. It's it is abhorrent, it is awful, but it's a necessary evil, because otherwise we wouldn't have blah blah blah. But then when you scratch the surface and begin to understand that none of that is real, that's all a facade. And I think it's the graphic horror. Is that right? I mean, I'm just trying to think back through our time. We looked at, there was images from Portland Down as well as other places, and the more you just looked and the more you just saw and the more you understood about the fact that, God, is it, I can't even think what it is now. Is it penicillin that kills guinea pigs?
Yeah.
Which is, guinea pig is the archetypal research animal.
Yeah.
And yet the best drug that we've had to date would have killed them if we'd have gone down that route.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. as Deborah has just said, it's archaic and it's like a gothic horror film. And I think that is true as well. It's just sort of like we can look and say maybe at some point it had its place, but really, in the modern world, and I'm talking modern world from 40 years ago, it really doesn't have any place now. But I think that for me, that's it was it's such an easy entry point into the animal rights movement.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way as you do about it, actually, in that sense where, we've moved up, we should be moving on as a society. And you do get that said quite a lot now, even in the public. They're saying, well, it's not necessary, is it? Look at all the being done, and it, using non-animal stuff. So the public kind of do know that. It just seems to be that the powers that be are extremely slow and drag their feet and don't really want things to change, when we all do, and most of the public, I think, exposed to the exposés that have gone on, do want things to change. But it's our politicians and corporate business that doesn't want things to change, and they seem to be holding it back more. So I just wanted to ask all of you what you thought, what you felt about that side of it.
I feel like when we show a picture of a primate to a person undergoing experimentation, they immediately make that connection with them being a wild animal, and oh wait, what are they doing here? They should not be here. So I feel like when it comes to more personal choices like food, people might find it a bit more difficult less digestible to accept that, okay, this is cruel, because that may feel like more of a necessity. But when they look at a beagle undergoing experimentation, or, a monkey, they immediately make that connection in their mind that, oh wait, this guy is supposed to be somewhere in the wild, and this guy is supposed to be home. What's happening? So I feel like that makes experimentation very accessible to people when we talk about wanting to get people to understand what is really going on in the animal rights movement. I feel like that's a very easy entry point, and that was like, in that sense, immediately, like, there's nobody for the most part that you'll find who would be like, oh yeah, this is fine. I mean, I came across this 80-year-old guy in the park last weekend, and he immediately was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I don't like dogs, but this is not okay, So, yeah, I think it's that contextual perception for people. They're like, okay, yeah, no, according to my perception, my context, this guy should be home. So I think that is what makes it accessible to people.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Jessamy, as time is moving on, would you like to conclude with your thoughts on why vivisection is, or anti-vivisection is part of a cornerstone of the animal rights movement? Anything else you'd like to add about the images that we've seen, or anything else? And then we can wrap it up.
Oh gosh. I don't have anything else to add about the images other than, please share them and, ask people to look at them, and ask people to contact their MPs to try and get, and ministers to try and get things changed for the future animals. With animal experiments, I think for me, it's the fact that the whole sort of premise of animal experiments is causing harm. I mean, you'll all know that animals in laboratories aren't covered by the Animal Welfare Act. And I think that shocks a lot of people. I actually had a university lecturer say to me, but what about the Animal Welfare Act? I said, well, it doesn't apply to animals in laboratories because you're setting out to cause them pain, suffering, distress, and lasting harm. And for all the other animal abuse industries, they're not specifically setting out to harm the animals, they would say. We look after them as like our families, blah, blah, blah. For me, I think that's probably the thing that I just think is so that there's that intentional harm, and that's the goal, that's the aim.
Yeah, I think that's.
And I know. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that's very true. Actually, I think that was what I was very badly getting to in what I was saying. But you're right, it is just purposefully damaging. There's there's nothing else there, is there? It's just, it just is about creating as much harm as you possibly can.
And I do think, Will, and I hope, and I say to people, we have to have hope or we wouldn't be doing this. I do think in X years' time, we will look back, or the next generation will look back and think, what? We did what? We transported animals from where, and we did what to them? And they will literally be like, that doesn't make any sense. Because I know when I was 8, when I first found out about animal experiments, I thought it was a joke. I went home and said to my mum, I've read this leaflet, that's not right, is it? And she said, yes, it is. That's what we do to animals. And I just remember thinking, no, we can't. And I was 8. So, because for me, I was typical, loved dogs, wanted to be a rabbit, all that kind of stuff. To know what people were doing and that it was legal and it was, everyone knew about it as well. I think you were saying, Louise or Deborah, everyone knows about it. And you're like, no, you don't actually know about it, because if you knew about it, you'd be thinking what I think. And people, no, I know about it. And it's, I think for me, that's the thing. It's the intention.
I think as well, just you saying about, people knowing about it, I think people know about it in the same vague way that they claim to know about lots of things. Oh yeah, I know about that. I don't dig into it. I don't want to know about it. I know it happens, I know. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say that I think that's the strength of this footage. It's gathered by people who were working there. It's not illegal. So it's not, it's not, when I worked at another group, we would, people, oh, you made that footage up, you staged it all. There's none of that, because it's what happens. It's the reality of what happens. And people can't argue with it.
Yeah, and I think as well, like you were saying about the fact that it's not a bad apple. It's not like this. It's not like an anomaly or something. It's just no, this is straightforward practice that's happening everywhere all of the time.
Yeah. And if you don't like what you see, you don't like something that's legally sanctioned. So you need to do something about that.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much for your time. I'm just going to do a blatant plug now before we go, particularly for Simran. We have a YouTube channel where these talks are available. So you go to Finally Ending Animal Testing on YouTube. The FEAT talks are all there, included. This one will be put up there, and there are some others through time. We also will be having one every month. It will be the last Tuesday of every month. Rebecca Ram is next, and I believe Louise is going to talk to us after that in July. But you're more than welcome to join us anytime. And if you can't join us, then obviously just look at what we've got doing out there. There's also a Facebook page and an Instagram. But yeah, FEAT, Finally Ending Animal Testing. Thank you very much for coming. It's been lovely to have you on board. So once again, then, thank you very, very much to Jessamy, and as always, very informative, very lovely, fantastic chat. Appalling imagery this time, but definitely worth it. And worth all of our time. So thank you to Jessamy for coming, and thank you to everybody else for coming. And we will see you all again soon.
Thank you for the invite. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.